Hey, what's up, fighting nerds? This is your boy Gashan, and I want to get straight to it. If you watch UFC 319, you saw the complete domination in the main event. Now, like a lot of us, we expected it to be more competitive, especially when the challenger, who's known for grappling, who's pretty much done exactly the same thing, shooting from afar and having relentless wrestling, hasn't been any different for a good way. You would think that the champion, Dricus du Plessis, would be extremely prepared for something like that. And he wasn't. It is one thing for someone to know and be competent in grappling, but face someone who is just leaps and bounds above them. This was not that case. Dricus du Plessis did not know what to do in each position that he was put into. And he's the champion, or was the champion of that division. What does that tell us? Quite literally what the title says. His camp failed him. You actually had hints of this leading up to it when you saw on the countdown, it was either the countdown or embedded, where his lead coach says, Hamzat thinks he's just gonna beat us with one thing. Yeah. If it happens to be the one thing that he does way better than your guy, and your guy doesn't know it all. Then you saw the videos of him wrestling like a whole bunch of flyweights, like them like weighing him down, and him doing certain sparring and roles that don't actually emulate what Chimaev would have brought to the fight. This means he was quite literally not prepared and was put through a training camp that didn't mirror anything that he was going to get into. Here's the thing though, this is not isolated here, because obviously this whole thing puts the middleweight division on notice, because they go, oh my gosh, we have to be really, really good at wrestling. You're not going to catch up to this guy as far as the wrestling standpoint, because one training camp isn't going to do it. But it would behoove training camps to understand that striking isn't the only thing that's important. And even if a person is a striker by nature, you probably should try to develop competencies in all the other areas. What does that mean? That means if this situation arises, they know what solution works best for it. This is something that we keep seeing over and over again. Now, usually I complain about this in the striking department, because striking in MMA is piss poor. And what I mean by that is, if you look at a lot of the mentality, when it comes to striking, it's if I throw something and it lands, I'm a good striker. No, striking has a lot to do about not even the actual concussive force. Manipulating the space in between with your footwork, throwing feints, setting these things up, and utilizing the entire body, right? Even when you are starting to throw strikes, don't be a headhunter. Use the body. Where are the leg kicks? If something is not open, open it. These are levels of thinking that for some reason just don't exist in MMA gyms, right? Or at least not all of them. Let me not be hyperbolic, but in a lot of them, you see that this is missing, because a lot of them don't throw leg kicks. They don't go for the body, and some of them don't even throw jabs. They're just throwing straight up power shots every time they get in particular range. Now, the reason why I even bring that up is because even though that might seem unrelated to the main event in 319, but it's just an example of how camps keep on failing. But why does this keep on happening? The sport is still relatively very young, right? And when it comes to that, there's going to be a lot of ideologies that still have yet to go out. Has MMA moved forward since the very first UFC event and Pride, all that? Yes, of course it has. People have gotten so much better, but it still lags behind, because we still have a lot of people in these training camps who have a lot of ego, who go, I want my fighters to fight this way, versus in the mixed martial arts landscape, what are the things that my fighter needs to be able to be successful? How should he look at striking? How should he look at grappling? What are the things that are most likely to happen in these scenarios? And if this person gets taken down by a double leg, how is he getting up? If he's getting held up against the fence, what's the best way for him to get out? You see this even in the Alex Pereira Ankalaev fight. This man got a brown belt and all that for knocking somebody out. Yet when he gets held up against the fence, all of a sudden he's complaining about how the person just held him up against there and it wasn't really anything. Well, if your corner had prepared you for that kind of position, you wouldn't complain. You would have just got out of it. Now, I think MMA training camps have to go, all right, let me evaluate this person. All right, this person has a natural aptitude for skill, whatever. That could be grappling or striking. Now, how do we make sure that he has all the competencies in the other thing so that even though this is his bread and butter, when he is in the other thing, he's not drowning? And that we see so much that when they get to the other space that they're not in, a lot of fighters are just drowning. Demetrius Johnson said something really good a long time ago. He said that MMA is the easiest sport to become a champion in. And some people were really insulted by that. But what he was saying is a lot of champions don't necessarily have to be well-rounded in order to be a champion. And Dricus is a really good example because it's about happenstance. Who was he fighting at the time? And then you run into this person who, once again, didn't do anything magical. He just did a double leg, then he went to a body lock, and you saw Dricus didn't take away, like he literally didn't even sprawl into the second round. There were a lot of things that he just didn't do that a lot of beginners, if you go into any jiu-jitsu class, any wrestling class, you're gonna see they know what to do in these positions, and he just did not do them. And once again, every fighter that steps into the octagon, ring, whatever, is a direct reflection of how they've been training before that. And we keep on seeing stuff like this over and over again. And this is like the most blatant example of someone being unprepared. And it's being talked about a lot because he was a champion. But he's not the only one that's been like this. And obviously in the heavyweight division, you see it a lot more because, you know, they just have to be big and strong. But obviously in other combat sports, when you look at kickboxing, you look at just regular, like traditional Western boxing, a lot of them in the lower weight classes, even in like the MMA, but still in the lower weight classes, they have to be much more skilled because they're not relying on said X factor. But usually you don't have someone who is just knocking somebody out. Now in the heavyweight division you can, but look at what's happening in boxing with Usyk and Fury, tremendously skilled individuals. Now obviously in the UFC in particular, we have Tom Aspinall, who is skilled, but the majority of the heavyweight division is not like that, which is what makes him a super anomaly, which is why we wanted to see him and Jones and all that. But the whole point is, remember when Jones came in there with Cyril and Cyril was just lost in that? He wasn't prepared. Even before Cyril fought Jones, all Ngannou had to do was learn a little bit of wrestling, a tiny bit, just to take Cyril off his game. That means the MMA factory, where they come from, doesn't really emphasize that. They're a lot about the kickboxing, but you're in mixed martial arts, so you gotta be competent. It's like, look at Alex Volkanovski's approach to fighting Islam. He brought a dude from Dagestan to show him those kinds of things. That is a great camp. And look how prepared he was the first fight. The second fight, we know what happened there. But when it came to the first fight, how did it look? His training camp knew what it was. This is a glaring example of a training camp that was so much into its ego that it thought that they could literally avoid an entire thing. They said, oh yeah, if we get on the ground, we know we're gonna do that. All right, well, if you knew that, then why didn't you practice the right ways to get up? This is a very strange thing that is permeating throughout MMA. And I think we have to really examine, or at least they do, have to examine how their camps are run and how they can really make competent fighters that can compete at a super high level and get consistent results in that way. Let me know what you think. Do you think that MMA training camps are doing everything right? Or is there much to be desired when it comes to creating well-rounded fighters? Let me know in the comments.